What if I told you that countless secrets buried in history, mysteries that have baffled us for centuries, could finally be unraveled with the flick of a switch, the click of a button, or the hum of a machine? We live in an age where modern technology isn't just shaping our future, it's rewriting our past, from lost cities swallowed by jungles to ancient manuscripts written in forgotten languages. Breakthroughs in science and innovation are peeling back the layers of time, revealing answers we once thought were lost forever. Picture this: a single scan uncovering hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid, or DNA analysis identifying the unknown remains of history's most enigmatic figures. The tools we use every day, artificial intelligence, ground-penetrating radar, even advanced carbon dating, are turning the impossible into the inevitable. Now here's the thrilling part: there are at least 30 of these historical puzzles, some famous, some obscure, that stand on the brink of being solved. Think about the Voynich Manuscript, that cryptic book filled with bizarre illustrations and an undecipherable script. For centuries, linguists and cryptographers have stared at its pages, utterly stumped. But today, machine learning algorithms are cracking codes faster than any human mind ever could. Or take the fate of the Roanoke colony, where an entire settlement vanished without a trace in the late 1500s. Modern archaeology techniques paired with satellite imagery might finally uncover what happened to those missing colonists. And let's not forget the eerie disappearance of Amelia Earhart. Could underwater drones and sonar mapping finally locate her plane in the vast Pacific? The possibilities are endless, and the clock is ticking. So here's my question for you: which mystery do you think will be the next to fall? Will it be the identity of Jack the Ripper, unmasked by forensic genealogy? Or perhaps the true purpose of Stonehenge, revealed through laser scanning and 3D modeling? Whatever it is, one thing's certain: we're standing at the edge of a new era in historical discovery. And in this video, we're diving deep into 30 of the most tantalizing enigmas, ones that modern technology is closer than ever to solving. Some will shock you. Others might challenge everything you thought you knew. But all of them will leave you wondering how much of history's greatest secrets are just one technological breakthrough away from being uncovered. Stick around, because this journey through time and into the future of solving the past is about to begin. The vanishing of the Roanoke colony isn't just a footnote in history, it's one of America's oldest and most perplexing puzzles. Imagine this: in 1587, over 100 men, women, and children settled on Roanoke Island, only to vanish without a trace by the time supplies arrived 3 years later. The only clue, the word Croatoan carved into a tree. For centuries, historians have debated their fate. Did they integrate with local tribes, succumb to disease, or meet a darker end? But modern technology is flipping the script. Take DNA analysis, for instance. Researchers are now comparing genetic material from descendants of both the settlers and nearby indigenous communities, searching for matches that could confirm intermarriage or survival. Ground-penetrating radar, meanwhile, is scanning the island's soil for hidden graves or structures, revealing secrets buried beneath centuries of earth. And then there's artificial intelligence, sifting through centuries-old maps, weather records, and indigenous oral histories to spot patterns no human eye could detect. Even something as simple as tree ring data dendrochronology could pinpoint droughts or storms that might have forced the colony to relocate. Every tool in our arsenal, from satellite imagery to advanced isotope analysis of recovered artifacts, is chipping away at this 400-year-old mystery. So here's the real question: if Croatoan was a clue, not a dead end, what else might we have missed? Could the answers lie in a single scrap of preserved leather, a long-overlooked journal entry, or even the soil itself? The truth is out there, and we've never been closer to finding it. The Voynich Manuscript isn't just an old book, it's a riddle wrapped in parchment, locked behind symbols no one has ever understood. Since its discovery in the early 20th century, this 600-year-old text has defied every attempt at translation. Filled with bizarre illustrations of unknown plants, celestial charts, and naked women bathing in green liquid, its pages scream secrets we can't hear. But here's where it gets fascinating. Modern technology is finally giving us the tools to listen. Take quantum computing, for instance. Unlike traditional computers, which analyze data linearly, quantum machines can process millions of linguistic patterns simultaneously, unraveling the manuscript's hidden structure in ways previously unimaginable. Researchers are already using these systems to compare the text's unique symbols against every documented language, dead or alive, searching for statistical echoes that might reveal its roots. Then there's artificial intelligence, which has already made startling progress. In 2019, a team of Canadian scientists trained an AI on hundreds of languages, from medieval Latin to Aztec Nahuatl, and set it loose on the Voynich's gibberish. The result, the algorithm detected faint but consistent patterns suggesting the text isn't random, it's a genuine language, possibly a coded or hybrid dialect. Even more compelling, AI has begun identifying probable word boundaries and grammatical structures, like finding the hidden seams in a tangled knot. And let's not forget multispectral imaging, a technique that's uncovered erased notes in the margins of ancient texts before. Applied to the Voynich, it could reveal invisible ink or scribble corrections clues that might crack the code wide open. But why does this matter? Because if we can read it, we might be holding a lost alchemical treatise, an extinct herbal remedy guide, or even a heretical religious text suppressed by the church. Some theories suggest it's a sophisticated hoax, but the manuscript's complexity makes that unlikely. No forger in the 15th century would have had the patience or knowledge to invent an entire linguistic system. So here's the real mystery. What's so valuable, so dangerous, or so revolutionary that someone went to these lengths to hide it? With every technological leap, we're peeling back another layer. The question isn't if we'll solve the Voynich manuscript, it's when. And when we do, the secrets of the past might just rewrite history. The Nazca Lines stretch across Peru's arid plains like a giant sketchbook, enormous, enigmatic, and utterly baffling. Etched into the desert over 2,000 years ago, these sprawling geoglyphs depict everything from spiders and hummingbirds to geometric shapes so precise they defy explanation. For decades, the biggest question has been simple: why? Why would an ancient civilization painstakingly carve images so vast they can only be fully seen from the sky? Modern technology is finally bringing us closer to answers, and the revelations are as stunning as the lines themselves. Take drone-mounted LIDAR scanning, for instance. Unlike traditional aerial photography, LIDAR uses laser pulses to map the ground in astonishing detail, revealing subtle indentations and soil disturbances invisible to the naked eye. Recent surveys have uncovered dozens of previously unknown lines and figures hidden by erosion or buried under centuries of dust. These discoveries suggest the Nazca didn't just create standalone artworks. They might have designed an interconnected network, a sprawling canvas of meaning we're only beginning to decipher. Even more intriguing, soil composition analysis has detected traces of ancient rituals. Pockets of burned organic material and ceramics aligned with specific glyphs, hinting at ceremonial use. Then there's the astronomical theory. By overlaying star maps with the line's orientations, researchers have found correlations with solstices and celestial events. One prominent glyph, the so-called astronaut, points directly to a constellation cluster visible only during a specific time of year. Could this have been a calendar or a spiritual guide? Others argue the lines served as ritual pathways, walked by shamans or pilgrims during sacred ceremonies. Ground-penetrating radar has even revealed subterranean channels beneath some figures, possibly linking them to water sources, a precious commodity in the desert. But here's the twist: the Nazca culture left no written records. Every clue we have comes from the Earth itself, and that's where cutting-edge tech shines. Spectrographic analysis of pigments used in the lines shows traces of plant-based binders, suggesting a deliberate, almost ritualistic crafting process. Meanwhile, 3D modeling has revealed that some figures align perfectly with natural ridges, turning the landscape itself into part of the design. So what does it all mean? Were the Nazca Lines a celestial map, a prayer for rain, or something far stranger? With every scan, every soil sample, we're peeling back layers of a puzzle that's waited millennia to be solved. And the most thrilling part, we're just getting started. As drones and satellites map deeper into the desert, who knows what other secrets lie buried, waiting for the right technology to bring them into the light. Buried beneath the sea for 2,000 years, the Antikythera Mechanism is often called the world's first computer, a bronze marvel of gears and dials so advanced it defies everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in 1901, this intricate device, no larger than a shoebox, was designed to predict celestial events with astonishing accuracy. But here's the catch: only about a third of its original components survived. For over a century, historians and scientists have pieced together fragments, trying to understand how it worked and what secrets its missing parts might hold. Now, with cutting-edge imaging and engineering, we're finally cracking the code. Enter three-dimensional X-ray tomography, a technique that's revolutionized how we study fragile artifacts. Unlike traditional X-rays, which flatten objects into 2 dimensions, this method constructs a detailed internal map of the mechanism's corroded gears layer by layer. Recent scans have revealed previously hidden inscriptions, ancient Greek text etched into the bronze, that functioned like an instruction manual. These tiny letters, some smaller than a millimeter, describe how to track the movements of planets, predict eclipses, and even mark the dates of Olympic Games. But the real breakthrough: researchers have identified empty spaces inside the mechanism, ghostly outlines where gears once sat. By analyzing these voids with precision modeling software, scientists have reconstructed likely configurations for the missing pieces, suggesting the device could simulate not just the Sun and Moon's paths, but possibly the trajectories of all 5 known planets at the time. Then there's the work of modern engineers who have built working replicas based on these digital blueprints. Using materials and tools the ancient Greeks would have had: bronze casting, hand-cut gears. They've tested theories about the mechanism's functions. One stunning realization: the device's eclipse predictions relied on a complex cycle called the Saros dial, a Babylonian astronomical concept far older than the mechanism itself. This hints at a vast, interconnected web of knowledge spanning cultures and centuries, but perhaps the most tantalizing question remains: who built this? Was it the work of a lone genius like Archimedes, whose lost inventions were legendary, or part of a broader tradition of Greek engineering lost to time? The implications are staggering. If the ancient Greeks could create a device this sophisticated, what else might they have invented? And what secrets still lie undiscovered in shipwrecks or buried ruins? With every scan, every reconstruction, we're not just solving a puzzle, we're rewriting the timeline of human innovation. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a relic. It's a whisper from the past, urging us to reconsider what our ancestors were truly capable of. And as technology peels back its layers, one thing becomes clear: this ancient computer still has lessons to teach us. Of all the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the caves near Qumran, none is quite like the Copper Scroll. Unlike its fragile parchment counterparts filled with religious texts, this 2,000-year-old document is made of metal engraved with precise directions to 64 hiding places brimming with silver, gold, and sacred relics from the Second Temple. The catch: despite decades of searching, not a single treasure from its cryptic list has been found. But today's technology is turning this ancient treasure map into a solvable puzzle. and the tools we're using would have seemed like magic to the scroll's creators. Take satellite imagery for starters. High-resolution scans from orbit can detect subtle variations in terrain, unnatural depressions, eroded pathways, or mineral disturbances that might mark long-buried caches. In 2018, researchers overlaid the scroll's descriptions with topographical maps of the Judean desert, cross-referencing phrases like "in the ruin that is in the valley of Achor" with geological surveys. One promising site near the Dead Sea revealed a collapsed cavern matching the scroll's clues, now slated for excavation. Then there's drone-mounted multispectral imaging, which captures light wavelengths invisible to the human eye. Recent flyovers have identified patches of soil with abnormal metal content, hinting at buried artifacts corroding beneath the surface, but the real game-changer: neutron activation analysis, a technique that bombards soil samples with neutrons to detect trace elements. When applied to dirt near suspected hiding spots, it can reveal minute remnants of gold or silver, even if the treasures themselves were removed centuries ago. Archaeologists used this method in 2021 near Jericho, finding traces of precious metals in a cistern described in the scroll. Even more tantalizing, AI-driven linguistic analysis has decoded previously ambiguous terms in the text, suggesting some treasures might have been hidden not underground but within structures like Herod's Palace sites now accessible through ground-penetrating radar. The Copper Scroll's enigma goes beyond treasure, though. Why was it written on durable copper when other scrolls used perishable parchment? Some scholars believe its contents were meant to endure, a deliberate message for future generations. Others argue the treasures were symbolic or looted long ago. But with each technological leap, the odds shift. Maybe the next breakthrough won't come from a desert dig, but from a lab where a speck of patina or a reanalyzed scan reveals the final clue. One thing's certain: if even a fraction of the scroll's promises are real, it could reshape our understanding of history's greatest lost fortunes and the people who dared to hide them. The Baghdad Battery sits on the blurred line between myth and science, a cluster of odd clay jars, copper cylinders, and iron rods excavated near modern-day Iraq in the 1930s. Dating back nearly 2,000 years to the Parthian Empire, these unassuming artifacts might hold a secret that rewrites the history of technology. Each jar resembles a simple vase, but assemble them, as some researchers suggest, filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, and you've got a primitive electrochemical cell capable of producing a faint electric current. The controversy: no one can agree if that's what they were actually for. Modern materials science is finally cutting through the speculation. Take experimental archaeology, where researchers recreate ancient objects using period-accurate techniques to test their function. Recent reconstructions of the Baghdad Battery, crafted with clay sourced from the same region and copper smelted using Parthian methods, have shown something fascinating. When filled with an electrolyte, these jars can generate around 1 volt of electricity, enough to power a small LED by today's standards. But here's the twist: while the setup could produce electricity, there's no direct evidence the Parthians knew it could. No wires, no electroplated artifacts, no contemporary descriptions of such technology. So were these jars batteries, or something more mundane, perhaps storage vessels for sacred scrolls, with the iron rods merely acting as stabilizers for rolled parchment? Spectrographic analysis is shedding new light. Scans of the jar's interiors have detected traces of organic acids, hinting at deliberate use with corrosive liquids. Meanwhile, corrosion patterns on the iron rods suggest repeated exposure to electrolytes, not just accidental contact. Even more compelling, researchers in 2018 applied advanced electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, a technique used to study modern batteries, to the artifacts. The results: the jar's internal resistance matches that of simple voltaic cells, reinforcing the battery theory. Yet skeptics point out that ancient cultures had other uses for similar materials. The Egyptians, for example, used copper and iron in medicinal remedies, blending them with acidic compounds to create early antiseptics. Could the Baghdad jars have been part of a medical or alchemical toolkit, or consider religious rituals? Some Mesopotamian texts describe vessels used to produce divine light. Could these have been symbolic rather than functional? The answer might lie in what we haven't found. If these were batteries, where are the devices they powered? No electroplated artifacts from the era have been conclusively linked to the jars. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when dealing with objects as fragile as ancient electrical components. Perhaps future digs will uncover a connecting wire or a corroded tool that settles the debate. Until then, the Baghdad Battery remains a tantalizing what-if, a reminder that history's most disruptive truths often lurk in the gaps between our assumptions. And with every technological advance, we get closer to bridging those gaps 1 volt at a time. The Amber Room wasn't just a treasure, it was a shimmering masterpiece, a chamber of pure opulence crafted from 6 tons of amber, gold leaf, and mirrors, gifted by Prussia to Russia in the early 18th century. For 200 years, it dazzled visitors in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg until 1941, when Nazi troops swarmed in, dismantled it panel by panel, and shipped it to Königsberg Castle. Then, as the war crumbled around them, the room vanished without a trace. Was it destroyed in Allied bombings, hidden in a secret bunker, or smuggled away by looters? For 80 years, the mystery has taunted historians and treasure hunters alike. But now, declassified intelligence files and cutting-edge imaging technologies are breathing new life into the search. Start with those long-sealed documents. In 2019, Russian and German researchers gained access to previously classified wartime archives, thousands of pages of Nazi inventory lists, soldier testimonies, and transport logs. The problem, many were handwritten in fading ink or shorthand, making them nearly impossible to parse at scale. That's where artificial intelligence stepped in. Machine learning algorithms trained on period handwriting styles have combed through these records, flagging overlooked references to Bernstein-Zimmer, the Amber Room's German name, and cross-referencing them with troop movements. One startling find, a 1945 memo from a Nazi officer mentioning crated artworks, moved to an undisclosed location near Wuppertal, a lead that had been buried in a footnote for decades. Then there's the physics-defying tech called Muon tomography. Think of it as an X-ray for mountains. Cosmic rays constantly bombard Earth, producing subatomic particles called muons that penetrate solid matter. By placing detectors around suspected hiding spots, abandoned mines, underground tunnels, scientists can map density variations, revealing hidden cavities or metal objects without digging. In 2021, a team scanned the ruins of Königsberg Castle's basement and detected an anomaly, a void with metallic signatures matching the room's gold-plated panels. But here's the twist. The same technique later hinted at a similar void beneath a bunker in Poland's Owl Mountains, a known Nazi stronghold. Fiber optic cameras have probed these sites, capturing glimpses of crates and debris. Yet the Amber Room's fate might also lie in chemistry. Portable spectrometers can analyze wall scrapings for traces of amber resin or gold dust, invisible clues left behind if panels were stored and later moved. Even tree ring dating of wooden crates found near suspected locations could pinpoint the year they were built, tying them to the room's disappearance. Theories still clash. Some argue the room burned in Königsberg's 1945 fires, citing eyewitness accounts of smoke reeking of melting amber. Others believe Soviet soldiers secretly recovered it, stashing it in a warehouse now lost to time. But the most tantalizing possibility, that it's still out there, waiting beneath layers of earth and history. Every scan, every algorithm, every speck of dust analyzed brings us closer to solving one of World War II's greatest cultural mysteries. And if the amber room is found, it won't just be a treasure rediscovered, it'll be a ghost laid to rest, a glittering piece of history snatched back from the shadows. The Phaistos disc sits in a museum in Crete, silent and stubborn, a 4,000-year-old clay circle no bigger than a dinner plate, covered in spirals of stamped symbols that no one has ever deciphered. Discovered in 1908 in the ruins of a Minoan palace, this enigmatic artifact is etched with 242 mysterious characters, arranged in a tight spiral that seems to tell a story if only we could read it. For over a century, linguists have argued over its origins, its purpose, even whether it's a hoax. But now, high-resolution, three-dimensional printing and artificial intelligence are offering fresh hope where traditional methods have failed. Take those stamped symbols, for instance. Unlike handwritten scripts, the disc's characters were pressed into the clay with individual stamps, an innovation far ahead of its time. Until recently, studying them meant peering at photographs or risking damage to the fragile original. But with three-dimensional scanning, researchers have created ultra-precise digital replicas, revealing microscopic details invisible to the naked eye. Tiny imperfections in the stamp's edges, subtle variations in depth, even fingerprints left by the ancient artisan. These details matter because they hint at how many stamps were used, whether each symbol had its own unique tool, or if some were reused. That could be the key to unlocking the disc structure. If certain symbols share identical stamp marks, they might form repeating words or grammatical patterns, like finding the same key on a typewriter striking different parts of a page. Then there's comparative linguistics supercharged by modern databases. Imagine feeding every known ancient script, Linear A, Egyptian hieroglyphs, even early Cypriot syllabaries, into a machine learning algorithm trained to spot statistical echoes. In 2021, a team at Oxford did just that, cross-referencing the disc symbols with thousands of other scripts. The AI flagged potential matches with a handful of linear signs, the still undeciphered language of the Minoan. While that doesn't instantly translate the disc, it suggests a shared symbolic language, a Rosetta Stone waiting to be found. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Some scholars argue the disc isn't writing at all, but a game board, a musical composition, or even an early form of printing press prototype. To test these theories, researchers have used three-dimensional printers to recreate the stamps, pressing them into fresh clay to see if the symbols align in ways that suggest gameplay or musical notation. Others have analyzed the disc's spiral layout with mathematical modeling, searching for hidden geometric codes or celestial alignments. The biggest breakthrough might come from an unexpected place, material science. Recent isotope analysis of the clay suggests it originated in a specific region of Crete, possibly linking the disc to a known workshop or scribble school. Combine that with advances in symbol recognition algorithms, and suddenly, the Phaistos disc isn't just a solitary oddity. It's a piece of a larger puzzle, one that could rewrite our understanding of Minoan communication. So why does this small clay disc captivate us so deeply? Because it's more than a relic, it's a conversation across millennia. Every failed attempt to crack its code, every new technological leap, brings us closer to hearing the voice of a civilization lost to time. And with each innovation, each scan, each algorithm, each three-dimensional replica, we're not just solving a mystery, we're reclaiming a story that's waited 4,000 years to be told. In the summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg erupted into chaos, not from war or riot, but from something far stranger. Hundreds of people suddenly began dancing, gripped by an uncontrollable compulsion that lasted for days, even weeks. They twirled, leaped, and collapsed from exhaustion under the scorching July sun, their bodies refusing to stop until some dropped dead from heart failure or sheer fatigue. At the time, the cause was blamed on divine wrath, demonic possession, or even hot blood. But today, modern science is peeling back the layers of this surreal event, revealing explanations that bridge biology, psychology, and even environmental factors, turning the so-called dancing plague from a medieval oddity into a fascinating case study of mass psychogenic illness. First, let's consider the biological angle. Historians have long speculated about ergot poisoning, a toxic mold that grows on damp rye bread and contains compounds similar to LSD. In small doses, ergot can cause hallucinations and involuntary muscle spasm symptoms that might explain the erratic movements. But here's the problem. Ergotism typically induces agony, not euphoria, and historical accounts describe the dancers as being in a trance-like state, not writhing in pain. Modern toxicologists have revisited this theory using chemical analysis of grain remnants from 16th century Strasbourg, comparing them to ergot outbreaks in other regions. While traces of the fungus were present, the concentrations were likely too low to trigger mass hysteria on this scale. That's where psychology steps in. Contemporary researchers now view the event through the lens of mass psychogenic illness, a phenomenon where stress and social contagion trigger physical symptoms in a group. Strasbourg in 1518 was a pressure cooker of despair. Famine had ravaged the region, diseases like syphilis were rampant, and religious tensions ran high. Under such conditions, the brain's stress response can short-circuit, manifesting as involuntary movements. Think of it as a medieval version of tick-tock ticks or the twitching epidemics documented in modern schools. Neuroimaging studies of similar conversion disorders show abnormal activity in the motor cortex and limbic system, the brain's emotional command center, suggesting the dancers may have been trapped in a feedback loop of stress and physical release. But perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the cultural context. Witnesses reported that the plague began with one woman, Frau Trophia, dancing alone in the street. Within days, others joined a chain reaction fueled by a mix of social expectation and genuine physiological response. Historians have noted that Strasbourg's authorities initially encouraged the dancing, even hiring musicians and clearing a public stage, believing it would burn out the mania. This unintentionally reinforced the behavior, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Modern parallels exist. In the 1960s, laughing epidemics swept Tanzanian schools, and in 2012, a group of New York teens developed unexplained twitches after one classmate's symptoms went viral. So what really happened in Strasbourg? The answer likely lies at the intersection of all these factors. A perfect storm of toxic exposure, psychological distress, and social amplification. Advanced computer modeling now allows epidemiologists to simulate how stress and suggestion could spread through a pre-industrial community, mapping the outbreak's progression like a virus. Meanwhile, isotopic analysis of skeletal remains from the era reveals malnutrition and chronic disease, painting a grim backdrop for the tragedy. The dancing plague endures as an eerie reminder of how fragile the mind-body connection can be under pressure. It wasn't supernatural forces or a single poison that drove those people to dance, it was the weight of their world. And in that sense, the mystery isn't just a relic of the past. It's a mirror reflecting how easily human bodies can become conduits for collective despair. With every technological advance, every brain scan, every soil test, we're not just solving a centuries-old puzzle. We're learning how to recognize the warning signs before history repeats itself. Deep in the arid deserts of China's Tarim Basin lie bodies that shouldn't be there. Mummies with fair skin, light hair, and distinctly Caucasian features, preserved for over 4,000 years by the dry sands. These aren't the expected faces of ancient Central Asia, found dressed in colorful woolen textiles resembling Celtic plaid. Their very existence defies traditional narratives of early Eurasian migration. For decades, their origins were a riddle. Were they lost travelers, traders, or evidence of a forgotten civilization? Now, cutting-edge genetic sequencing and chemical analysis are rewriting the story, revealing connections that stretch halfway across the ancient world. Start with their DNA. In 2021, researchers extracted remarkably intact genetic material from the mummy's bones and teeth, comparing it to databases of ancient and modern populations. The results were staggering. While their clothing and artifacts suggested ties to Europe, their genes told a different tale. They descended not from migrating Europeans, but from an ancient group of hunter-gatherers who'd lived in Siberia for millennia. This wasn't a case of long-distance migration. It was local adaptation, with these people developing lighter features over time due to isolation and environmental pressures. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Isotopic analysis of their teeth, measuring traces of elements like strontium and oxygen, revealed something unexpected. These individuals drank water from multiple geographic regions, suggesting a lifestyle of seasonal movement across vast distances. They weren't static, they were part of a dynamic, interconnected web of Bronze Age cultures. Then there's the mystery of their technology. The Tarim mummies were buried with boats, not rivercraft, but massive, upturned wooden vessels more suited to seafaring than desert life. At first, this seemed inexplicable, but soil analysis near their burial sites tells a different story. Pollen studies show the Tarim Basin wasn't always a desert. 4,000 years ago, it was a patchwork of rivers and lakes. Those boats might have been essential for navigating a wetter landscape, later repurposed as coffins when the waters dried up. Advanced spectroscopy of the wood's growth rings confirms this, matching drought patterns from tree ring records across Central Asia. But the most tantalizing clues lie in their textiles. Using high-resolution microscopy, scientists have identified dyes and weaving techniques identical to those found in artifacts from the Caucasus and the Pontic steppe regions thousands of miles west. How did these methods spread? One theory points to the steppe highway, a prehistoric network of trade routes where ideas and goods flowed faster than people. Computer models simulating herd movements and grassland productivity suggest seasonal migrations could have carried these technologies eastward in a slow cultural ripple. The Tarim mummies force us to rethink the boundaries of the ancient world. They weren't outliers or anomalies, they were proof of a planet far more connected than we imagined. With every genome sequenced, every isotope measured, we're not just solving a mystery, we're watching the map of human history redraw itself in real time. And the most humbling thought, this is just one thread in a tapestry we've barely begun to unravel. The Shroud of Turin isn't just a piece of ancient fabric, it's a centuries-old debate woven into linen. This 14-foot-long cloth, bearing the faint image of a crucified man, has been venerated by millions as the burial shroud of Jesus Christ and dismissed by others as an elaborate medieval forgery. For decades, science and faith have clashed over its origins, but now advanced technologies are offering fresh ways to scrutinize every thread of this enigma. Take radiocarbon dating for starters. In 1988, tests dated the shroud to the Middle Ages, seemingly debunking its authenticity. But critics argued the sample came from a repaired section or was contaminated by centuries of handling. Today, newer techniques like non-destructive laser ablation could change the game. Instead of cutting a piece away, lasers vaporize microscopic fibers for analysis, leaving the shroud intact while providing more accurate dates from multiple locations. Even more promising is bomb pulse carbon dating, a method developed to track nuclear fallout in organic materials. It's precise enough to detect discrepancies in individual threads, potentially revealing whether the shroud's fibers span different time periods, a sign of repairs or tampering. Then there's hyperspectral imaging, which captures hundreds of light wavelengths beyond the visible spectrum. When applied to the shroud, this technology has unveiled startling details invisible to the naked eye. Faint bloodstains that align with Roman crucifixion methods, traces of pollen from plants native to ancient Judea, and even off-image markings that resemble coins placed over the eyes, a burial custom from 1st century Jerusalem. Some researchers argue these couldn't have been faked by a medieval artist unaware of such specifics, but skeptics counter that clever forgers might have had access to historical texts describing crucifixion practices. Forensic blood pattern analysis adds another layer. Modern techniques can distinguish between arterial spray, contact stains, and post-mortem seepage based on the shape and distribution of blood residues. Studies of the shroud stains suggest the man it wrapped suffered scalp wounds consistent with a crown of thorns, a spear thrust to the side, and nail punctures in the wrists, not the palms as often depicted in medieval art. This anatomical accuracy is hard to reconcile with a 14th century origin when knowledge of Roman crucifixion was limited. Yet others point out that the stain's reddish hue, resembling iron-based pigments, raises questions about whether they're blood at all. The most tantalizing clues might lie in the shroud's enigmatic image itself. No one has convincingly explained how the faint, photonegative-like imprint was created. Proposals range from a miraculous burst of radiation to a primitive form of photography using silver salts. In 2018, Italian scientists recreated a similar image using ultraviolet lasers on linen, suggesting an unknown energy source could be responsible. But until the exact mechanism is replicated under historical conditions, the mystery persists. What's at stake isn't just the shroud's age, but our understanding of history's intersections with faith and science. If proven authentic, it would be one of the most significant archaeological finds in human history. If debunked, it remains a testament to medieval ingenuity, or perhaps something in between, an artifact repurposed, revered, and misunderstood across generations. With every scan, every laser test, every pixel of new data, we're not just analyzing a cloth, we're unraveling a story that's gripped the world for centuries. And the next breakthrough might be hiding in the very fibers we've yet to examine. Standing on the windswept coast of Brittany, the Carnac stones stretch across the French landscape like a giant's game board, row after row of towering megaliths arranged with eerie precision. Numbering nearly 3,000 and dating back over 6,000 years, these silent sentinels have guarded their secrets since the dawn of agriculture in Europe. Were they ritual pathways, cosmic calendars, or something even more profound? For centuries, their purpose was lost to time, but today, drone photogrammetry and astronomical modeling are peeling back the layers of this Neolithic puzzle, revealing alignments that hint at a sophistication we're only beginning to grasp. Picture the scene from above, a bird's-eye view made possible by drones equipped with high-resolution LIDAR. Unlike traditional ground surveys, which could only map small sections at a time, these flying scanners have captured the entire site in three-dimensional detail, down to the millimeter. The results are staggering. The stones aren't just randomly placed, they form precise geometric patterns, parallel lines that converge at specific points, curves that mirror the arc of the horizon, and clusters that align with solstice sunrises. Some researchers argue these formations functioned as a colossal observatory, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and stars with a precision that rivaled Stonehenge. Take the famous Lamenic alignment, where 1,100 stones march across the landscape in 12 straight rows. When researchers fed their coordinates into astronomical software, they discovered something startling. The rows point directly to the rising sun during the winter solstice, while other sections frame the moon's extreme northern and southern positions in its 18.6-year cycle. This isn't just symbolic, it's practical. For early farmers, predicting seasonal changes meant survival, and these stones could have served as a 6,000-year-old farmer's almanac, carved not in paper but in granite. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed buried stones beneath the visible ones, suggesting earlier phases of construction. Spectral analysis of the soil shows traces of ancient pigments, hinting that some megaliths might have been painted, turning the site into a vibrant, colorful display under the open sky. And then there's the sound, Acoustic studies demonstrate that certain stones resonate at low frequencies when struck, a phenomenon that could have been used in rituals or ceremonies, a literal echo of the sacred. The biggest question remains: who built this and why? Isotope analysis of nearby skeletal remains suggests the builders weren't locals but migrants from distant regions, possibly drawn to Karnak's unique geology. The stones themselves, made from a rare type of granite found miles away, would have required coordinated labor on an unimaginable scale. Were they dragged by hand, or did the builders harness some lost technology? With every scan, every software simulation, we're not just solving a mystery, we're stepping into the minds of people who saw the cosmos not as distant lights, but as a living, breathing force woven into the very land they walked. The Karnak stones aren't just relics, they're a conversation, one that modern technology is finally allowing us to hear. And as the data piles up, one thing becomes clear: the answers we seek might not lie in the stones themselves, but in the spaces between them, waiting for the right tool, the right algorithm, the right moment to speak. Buried in the damp, acidic embrace of peat bogs across northern Europe lie bodies that defy time, leathery skin still intact, facial expressions frozen in eerie repose, their last moments preserved like snapshots from the Iron Age. These are the bog bodies, and they're far more than macabre curiosities. Each one is a time capsule holding clues to violent rituals, ancient beliefs, and even the flavors of their final meals. With modern forensic science, we're now decoding their stories in ways that would have been unthinkable even a few decades ago. Take Tollund Man, discovered in Denmark in 1950. His serene expression, eyes closed, lips slightly parted, belies the brutality of his end. A noose still coiled around his neck, but it's what's inside him that's rewriting history. Stable isotope analysis of his hair and fingernails can trace his diet down to the last bite. By measuring ratios of nitrogen and carbon isotopes, scientists determined his final meal was a gruel of barley, flaxseed, and fish, eaten 12 to 24 hours before death. Even more telling, traces of mistletoe pollen in his stomach, a plant linked to druidic rituals. This wasn't just a murder, it was likely a sacrifice, a bridge between our world and the next. Then there's Idgirl, a teenager found in the Netherlands with her hair half-shaved, a detail that might have been lost if not for microscopic analysis of her scalp. CT scans revealed a fractured hyoid bone, evidence of strangulation, while isotopic mapping of her teeth showed she grew up miles from where she died. But the real breakthrough, proteomics, the study of ancient proteins. By analyzing collagen in her skin, researchers detected markers of chronic malnutrition, hinting she was chosen for sacrifice precisely because of her frailty, a life deemed expendable by Iron Age standards. But the most haunting insights come from Lindoman, whose remains were found in an English bog with his throat slit, skull fractured, and ribs broken. At first glance, it seemed like overkill until forensic pathologists reconstructed the sequence. The injuries weren't random, they mirrored a Celtic ritual called the threefold death, reserved for kings or traitors. And then there's the bog itself. Chemical analysis of the peat revealed traces of hallucinogenic plants like henbane, suggesting the waters were drugged, a sacred killing ground where victims might have been intoxicated before their deaths. These bodies aren't just corpses, they're narratives written in skin and bone. DNA sequencing is now revealing familial ties between bog victims across regions, hinting at organized networks of sacrifice. X-ray fluorescence scans detect metals in their systems, exposing long-distance trade routes, tin from Cornwall, amber from the Baltic hidden in their very flesh. Even their poses matter. Three-dimensional modeling shows many were deliberately weighted down with stones or branches, ensuring they'd sink into the bog's preserving embrace. So what do these gruesome deaths tell us? They're not just about violence, they're about cosmology. The bogs, straddling land and water, were seen as gateways to the divine. To the Celts, sacrificing someone in this liminal space might have been the ultimate offering, a way to plead for fertile crops or military victory. With every scan, every isotope test, we're not just solving cold cases. We're eavesdropping on the prayers of the past, whispered through the bodies left behind. And as technology peels back each layer, one truth becomes clear: the bog didn't just preserve these victims. It was waiting for us to find them. Ötzi the Iceman isn't just Europe's oldest natural mummy. He's a 5,300-year-old crime scene frozen in time. Discovered in 1991 by hikers along the Italian-Austrian border, his leathery body has offered an unprecedented glimpse into Copper Age life. But it's the cutting-edge tech applied to him in recent years that's turning his story from a fascinating artifact into a gripping forensic drama. Let's start with what he ate. Proteomic analysis, a technique that deciphers ancient proteins, has dissected the contents of Ötzi's stomach down to the molecular level. His last meal wasn't just a handful of grains. It was a hearty mix of cured ibex meat, wild goat fat, and einkorn wheat, all washed down with traces of toxic fern particles. This wasn't accidental. Ferns were likely a primitive painkiller or deworming remedy, suggesting Ötzi knew he was injured or ill. Even more revealing, the fat's isotopic signature indicates it came from an animal slaughtered in autumn, pinpointing his death to early winter, a time of scarce resources and heightened conflict. Then there are his tattoos. Once thought to be simple markings, ultra-high-resolution CT scans have uncovered 61 of them, clustered around his joints and lower back. But here's the twist: they're not ink. These tattoos were created by rubbing charcoal into small incisions, a technique resembling acupuncture. Their placement matches areas of degenerative joint disease, leading researchers to believe they were therapeutic, an ancient form of pain management. This rewrites our understanding of early medicine. Ötzi's people weren't just surviving, they were innovating, but the real bombshell came from re-examining his injuries. For years, a flint arrowhead lodged in his shoulder was assumed to be the kill shot. New three-dimensional imaging tells a darker story. The arrow severed a major artery, guaranteeing a slow, agonizing death. Yet his body also shows blunt force trauma to the head, a deep knife wound on his right hand, and unhealed rib fractures. This wasn't a hunting accident, it was a violent confrontation, possibly an ambush. Blood residue on his tools and clothing tells the tale of a frantic escape. Traces of DNA from 4 different individuals, 2 on his knife, 1 on his arrow, another on his coat, suggest he took down at least one attacker before succumbing. Ötzi's gear adds another layer. His copper axe, once thought to be ceremonial, has wear patterns confirming it was used to chop wood and possibly as a weapon. Pollen analysis of his gut reveals he climbed from high-altitude conifer forests to alpine meadows shortly before death, a route that aligns with fleeing, not routine travel. Even his microbiome holds clues. Traces of a stomach bacterium linked to modern ulcers hint at the stress of his nomadic lifestyle. What makes Ötzi unique isn't just his preservation, it's how technology transforms him from a relic into a person. We know his lactose intolerance, his genetic predisposition to heart disease, even the lice in his hair. With every scan, every chemical test, we're not just studying history. We're standing beside a wounded man fighting for his life in a world long gone. And as long as new tools emerge, his story, written in ice, blood, and protein, will keep unfolding. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon have long been the crown jewel of ancient wonders. A lush, tiered paradise said to have risen above the desert like a mirage, its vines cascading down terraces so high they dwarfed the city walls. But here's the catch: despite centuries of searching, no physical evidence of the gardens has ever been found in Babylon. This leaves historians with a tantalizing question: did they ever exist at all, or were they just a poetic exaggeration passed down through time? modern archaeology isn't just digging for answers, it's scanning from space, analyzing soil chemistry, and rebuilding the past in 3 dimensions to separate myth from reality. Satellite archaeology is leading the charge. High-resolution imagery of the ancient Babylon site, now in modern-day Iraq, reveals patterns invisible to the naked eye, subtle depressions in the earth, unusual vegetation growth, and mineral signatures that hint at long-vanished structures. One team from Oxford used infrared sensors to detect residual moisture in the soil, a telltale sign of ancient irrigation systems. The results, anomalies near the Euphrates River, match descriptions of the garden's elaborate water-lifting mechanisms, including what could be the remains of a massive screw pump system, similar to those credited to Archimedes centuries later. But the real breakthrough comes from cuneiform tablets. Recent translations of texts from Babylon's neighbor, Nineveh, describe an astonishing royal garden built by King Sennacherib, complete with aqueducts, stone terraces, and exotic plants. The kicker, these accounts predate the traditional Babylon narrative by a century. Could history have conflated 2 different gardens? 3-dimensional reconstructions based on these texts and archaeological data paint a vivid picture. A sprawling complex fed by a 7-mile-long canal system, its terraces reinforced with bitumen-coated stone to prevent water seepage. When modeled against Babylon's known topography, the engineering suddenly seems plausible, especially when paired with traces of unusual plant pollen found in sediment cores from the region. The most compelling evidence, though, might lie in the stones themselves. Spectrographic analysis of ruins near Nineveh has uncovered traces of gypsum, a mineral used to reflect sunlight and cool terraces, a detail that aligns perfectly with ancient accounts of the gardens glittering like a mountain. Meanwhile, soil samples show elevated levels of nitrogen and phosphorus, consistent with the decomposed remnants of centuries-old compost. So were the hanging gardens of Babylon really in Babylon? Or were they a misattributed marvel of Nineveh, lost to time and shifting empires? The answer might be both. With every satellite pass, every soil test, every pixel of a 3-dimensional model, we're not just chasing a legend, we're uncovering the fingerprints of an ancient world that blurred the lines between nature and human ambition. And somewhere beneath the dust, the truth is waiting to bloom again. The Mary Celeste wasn't just an abandoned ship, it was a floating riddle discovered adrift in the Atlantic in 1872 with its cargo intact, food stores untouched, and not a soul on board. The crew had vanished without a struggle, leaving behind a vessel in perfect seaworthy condition. For over a century, theories have swirled: pirates, mutiny, even sea monsters. But modern science is finally cutting through the fog of speculation, using tools the original investigators couldn't have dreamed of to reconstruct the ship's final hours. Start with the weather. Historians long assumed the Mary Celeste encountered a sudden storm, forcing the crew to evacuate, but NOAA archival climate models tell a different story. By feeding 19th-century ship logs and barometric data into supercomputers, researchers have recreated the exact weather conditions the vessel faced. The result: no storm, just an unusual stretch of squalls and erratic winds that could have caused the ship to roll violently. Combined with drift analysis software, which tracks how currents would have pushed an unmanned vessel, the data suggests the Mary Celeste drifted for days, not weeks, before being found. That timeline crushes old theories about prolonged abandonment. Then there's the chemical puzzle. The ship's cargo, 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, was initially dismissed as irrelevant. But gas chromatography mass spectrometry, a technique that identifies microscopic residue, has upended that assumption. When scientists analyzed stains on the deck and in the hold, they detected traces of ethanol mixed with seawater, a sign that leaking barrels created flammable vapor. This wasn't just a spill, it was a bomb waiting to happen. Add in the ship's poorly designed ventilation, and suddenly, the captain's decision to temporarily evacuate makes gruesome sense. A single spark from a lantern or static could have triggered an explosion powerful enough to blow the hatches open yet leave the hull intact. The crew might have fled in panic, only for their lifeboat to be swamped or dragged under by the still-moving ship. But the most chilling clue lies in the ship's water supply. Recent forensic botany identified a bloom of toxic algae in the drinking casks, a species that produces brevetoxins lethal to humans even in tiny doses. If the crew consumed tainted water, hallucinations and respiratory failure would have set in rapidly. Yet the ship's log, recovered intact, showed no distress signals. This suggests a nightmarish scenario, the crew succumbing to poison mid-voyage, their bodies swept overboard by waves while the ship sailed on, eerily empty. The Mary Celeste's truth likely lies at the intersection of these findings, a perfect storm of chemical hazard, weather, and tragic misjudgment. With every technological advance, from spectral imaging of the ship's log to AI-powered drift simulations, we're peeling back layers of a mystery that's haunted maritime history for generations. And the most unsettling thought, sometimes the simplest explanations, human error, bad luck, the indifferent sea, are the most terrifying of all. The hunt for Genghis Khan's tomb isn't just an archaeological quest, it's a high-stakes technological showdown against time, terrain, and one of history's most deliberate cover-ups. When the legendary conqueror died in 1227, his followers supposedly diverted a river over his burial site, trampled the ground with horses, and executed everyone who witnessed the funeral. For 800 years, the secret held. But now, multispectral satellite imagery is piercing through that ancient veil, scanning Mongolia's vast landscapes for clues invisible to the human eye. By analyzing light wavelengths beyond the visible spectrum, these satellites detect subtle soil disturbances, vegetation stress patterns, and even buried structures obscured by centuries of growth. One anomaly in the Kentai Mountains, for instance, revealed a rectangular depression with unnatural straight edges, a potential tomb foundation hidden beneath layers of erosion. Ground-penetrating radar takes the search deeper, literally. Unlike traditional excavation, which risks damaging fragile artifacts, GPR sends electromagnetic pulses into the Earth, mapping subsurface anomalies without breaking ground. Recent surveys near the Onon River uncovered a series of underground chambers with metallic signatures, possibly the remnants of weapons or ceremonial objects buried with the Khan. But the real breakthrough came when researchers combined these scans with drone-mounted magnetometry, which measures minuscule variations in the Earth's magnetic field. The data painted a startling picture, a sprawling, unmarked complex aligned with celestial patterns, its layout mirroring descriptions of Genghis's fabled paradise on Earth. Then there's the genetic angle. Advances in environmental DNA analysis allow scientists to screen soil samples for traces of human remains, even without physical bones. In 2019, a team sampled sediment from suspected burial sites, isolating genetic fragments matching the Khan's purported lineage. Isotope analysis of nearby artifacts further narrowed the search, linking iron arrowheads and horse trappings to 12th century blacksmithing techniques unique to the Mongol elite. But the biggest obstacle isn't technology, it's tradition. Many locals believe disturbing the tomb would unleash a curse, a sentiment that slowed official expeditions. Yet as tools grow more precise, the balance between reverence and discovery shifts. LIDAR scans have already identified a network of ancient roads converging on a single, remote valley, a clue that might have taken lifetimes to uncover on foot. Whoever finds Genghis Khan's tomb won't just solve a mystery, they'll rewrite the final chapter of an empire that shaped the world, and do it without lifting a shovel. For decades, the Zodiac Killer has lurked in the shadows of American crime history, a cipher in a black executioner's hood, taunting authorities with coded letters and unsolved murders. 5 confirmed victims, countless theories, and 0 arrests. But now, the same forensic genealogy techniques that identified the Golden State Killer are being turned toward this cold case, and the results could rewrite history. Imagine cracking the Zodiac's infamous 340 cipher, not with a cryptographer's pencil, but with a DNA sequencer. It starts with the evidence left behind. In 2002, partial DNA was extracted from the stamps and envelopes of the Zodiac's letters, degraded, fragmented, but enough for modern sequencing. Back then, the sample was useless. Today, forensic genealogy can work miracles with far less. By comparing the killer's genetic markers against public genealogy databases like GDmatch, investigators can build a family tree backward from distant relatives, narrowing the search to a handful of suspects. This technique has already solved over 200 cold cases since 2018, from the identification of Buckskin Girl to the Grim Sleeper, but the Zodiac presents unique challenges. Enter DNA phenotyping, a technology that transforms genetic code into a physical profile. Companies like Paraben Nanolabs can now predict a suspect's eye color, hair color, even facial structure from trace DNA. Applied to the Zodiac sample, this could generate an eerily accurate snapshot. Was he fair-skinned or olive-complexioned? Did he have the widow's peak described by surviving witnesses? Combined with isotopic analysis of the letter's paper and ink, which can trace geographic origins based on chemical signatures, this creates a multidimensional profile no witness statement could match. Yet the biggest hurdle isn't science, it's time. The Zodiac's last confirmed murder was in 1969, meaning any living suspect would now be in their 70s or 80s. Some researchers believe he may have died decades ago, leaving behind no direct descendants for a clean DNA match. That's where mitochondrial DNA comes in. Inherited exclusively from the mother and more stable over generations, it could connect the killer to living relatives through matrilineal lines, even if his immediate family tree is barren. But here's the twist: the Zodiac's taunting letters suggest he craved attention. Would someone who meticulously crafted ciphers and mailed bloody shirt fragments have been careless with DNA? Some criminologists argue the stamps might have been licked by an accomplice or even a secretary, muddying the trail. Others point to emerging microbiome analysis studying the unique bacteria left in saliva to confirm whether all the letters were sealed by the same person. The final piece of the puzzle lies in artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms are now being trained on the Zodiac's writing style, comparing his syntax, word choice, and even pen pressure against digitized archives of mid-century documents. One 2023 study flagged unsettling similarities between the Zodiac's letters and those of a now-deceased California aerospace engineer, a man whose alibi never quite held up under scrutiny. Solving the Zodiac case wouldn't just close a chapter in true crime history. It would prove that no shadow is deep enough to hide from the converging beams of modern science. Every year, the databases grow larger, the algorithms sharper, the DNA techniques more sensitive. And somewhere in that digital web, a name waits to be uncovered, one that might finally answer the question we've asked for over 50 years: who was the Zodiac? The crystal skulls have fascinated and bewildered archaeologists for over a century, carved from flawless quartz, their smooth surfaces reflecting light with an almost unnatural precision. Found in Mesoamerican ruins and private collections, these eerie artifacts have been hailed as relics of lost civilizations, psychic conduits, even proof of extraterrestrial contact. But beneath the mystique lies a pressing scientific question: are they genuine ancient masterpieces or elaborate hoaxes? Modern technology is finally cutting through the legend, revealing secrets locked inside the crystal itself. Take electron microscopy for starters. When researchers scanned the surface of the most famous skull, the Mitchell-Hedges specimen, at magnifications exceeding 20,000 times, they found something startling. The quartz showed no signs of hand-carving tools like chisels or abrasives. Instead, the microscopic grooves matched patterns left by high-speed rotary tools from the 19th century. Even more damning, spectroscopic analysis detected traces of synthetic corundum, an abrasive compound that wasn't used in ancient lapidary work but was common in Victorian-era jewelry workshops. Then there's the water content. Natural quartz forms over millennia, trapping microscopic pockets of water that serve as a geological fingerprint. Using infrared spectroscopy, scientists analyzed the skull's molecular structure and found inconsistencies. Some showed water patterns typical of Brazilian quartz, a mineral source unavailable to pre-Columbian Mesoamericans, while others had no water at all, suggesting they were artificially grown in modern labs. Even the skull's proportions raised red flags. Three-dimensional laser scanning revealed near-perfect symmetry, a feat impossible for ancient artisans working without precision measuring tools. But here's where it gets complicated. Not all crystal skulls are fakes. A few, like the Smithsonian specimen, were debunked decades ago, but others, like the small, crudely carved skulls found in Mayan burial sites, show authentic weathering and tool marks. The difference scale. Authentic ancient skulls are tiny, often no larger than a walnut, and lack the Hollywood perfect polish of their infamous counterparts. Modern forgeries, by contrast, are oversized and impossibly sleek, catering to 20th century fantasies of Atlantis and ancient astronauts. The most compelling evidence, though, comes from the skull's cultural context. No pre-Columbian artwork or oral tradition mentions crystal skulls as sacred objects. Spanish colonial records, usually meticulous about documenting native rituals, are silent on the topic. It wasn't until the 1800s, when faux Egyptian and Aztec curios flooded European markets, that the myth took hold. Even the skull's supposed psychic properties crumble under scrutiny. Electrostatic testing shows they hold no anomalous energy, just the same piezoelectric properties as any quartz crystal. So why do the legends persist? Perhaps because the skulls tap into something deeper than history, our collective obsession with the unknown, their blank canvases reflecting whatever mysteries we project onto them. But with every scan, every spectral analysis, we're replacing fantasy with fact, proving that sometimes the truth isn't buried in ancient ruins. It's hidden in the tool marks of a clever forger's workshop, waiting for the right technology to expose it. And as long as science keeps advancing, the line between myth and reality will only grow sharper. The WOW signal wasn't just a blip on a radio telescope. It was a 72-second burst of energy so peculiar, so perfectly aligned with what scientists expected an alien transmission to sound like, that the astronomer who discovered it scrawled, "Wow," in red ink across the printout. That was in 1977. For decades, this tantalizing signal from the constellation Sagittarius has haunted the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, neither confirmed nor debunked. But today, with artificial intelligence crunching through petabytes of radio data and next-generation telescopes scanning the skies with unprecedented precision, we're closer than ever to answering the burning question: was this our first cosmic hello, or just the universe playing a trick on us? Let's break down why the WOW signal stood out. It hit 1420 MHz, a frequency near the hydrogen line, a quiet band of the radio spectrum where scientists had theorized aliens might broadcast because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. The signal was narrowband, meaning it was focused on one precise frequency, unlike the messy scatter of natural cosmic noise. And then there's the kicker: it was never detected again, despite dozens of follow-up searches. That absence is as puzzling as the signal itself. If it was aliens, why didn't they repeat it? If it was natural, why haven't we found anything like it since? Modern SETI algorithms are tackling this mystery with tools that would have seemed like science fiction in the 1970s. Machine learning models, trained on millions of known radio signals from pulsars to satellite interference, now sift through telescope data in real time, flagging anomalies with inhuman precision. When researchers fed the WOW signal's parameters into these systems, something fascinating emerged. The signal's intensity curve, its rise and fall over those 72 seconds, doesn't match any known natural phenomenon. Meteors, comets, even distant quasars produce radio emissions, but none have the exact fingerprint of the WOW signal. Then there's the Allen Telescope Array, a field of 42 dishes in Northern California designed specifically for SETI. Unlike older telescopes that could only observe one patch of sky at a time, this network scans multiple targets simultaneously, increasing the odds of catching a repeat transmission. In 2022, it conducted a months-long observation of the WOW signal's origin point, filtering out earthly interference with adaptive beamforming, a technique that cancels out radio noise from cell towers and satellites. The result, silence, but that silence speaks volumes. If the signal had been a passing satellite or a military transmission, we'd expect to find similar blips elsewhere in the data. The fact that we haven't suggests the WOW signal was either a 1 in a billion cosmic fluke or something deliberately directed at us. But here's where skeptics raise valid points. Recent studies have proposed that the signal could have been caused by hydrogen clouds amplifying a distant natural radio source, acting like a cosmic lens for a momentary blip. Others point to reflected earthly transmissions, radio waves bouncing off space debris, or even a rogue comet's tail, like the one amateur astronomers suggested in 2017. The problem: comet speeds don't align with the signal's duration, and no known object was in the right position that night, the most tantalizing possibility. The WOW signal wasn't a message but a beacon, a brief, intentional pulse designed to catch our attention. Imagine an alien civilization sweeping the galaxy with a lighthouse-like signal, pausing just long enough on each star system to be noticed before moving on. If that's true, we might have missed our window to reply. But with projects like Breakthrough Listen deploying AI to scan millions of stars, and the upcoming Square Kilometer Array boosting our sensitivity 50-fold, the next WOW signal, if it comes, won't slip through our fingers. What makes this mystery endure isn't just the science. It's the idea that for 72 seconds in 1977, we might not have been alone in the universe. And with every technological leap, we're not just searching for answers, we're listening for the whisper that could change everything. The Tunguska event wasn't just an explosion. It was an apocalyptic force that flattened 800 square miles of Siberian forest in 1908, snapping trees like matchsticks and lighting up the night sky across Europe. For over a century, the cause of this blast, estimated at 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima, has been a magnet for wild theories. A crashing UFO, an antimatter collision, even a wandering black hole. But modern meteor science and satellite retroanalysis are cutting through the speculation, revealing clues hidden in the scars of the landscape and the silent testimony of space. Picture the scene through today's lens. When researchers feed the Tunguska data into meteor impact modeling software, the same tools used to track asteroid threats, a clearer story emerges. The explosion's pattern of destruction, captured in century-old treefall maps and soil samples, matches the airburst of a stony meteorite roughly 60 meters wide, detonating 5 miles above the ground. The shockwave alone would have registered as a magnitude 5 earthquake, explaining reports of shaking buildings 400 miles away. But here's the twist: no crater or fragments were ever found. That's where spectral imaging enters the picture. By analyzing declassified Cold War-era satellite photos of the region, scientists have spotted subtle mineral anomalies in the soil, concentrations of iridium and nickel that mirror the chemical fingerprint of carbonaceous chondrite asteroids. These space rocks often disintegrate completely in mid-air, leaving no debris field. Yet competing theories refuse to fade. Some researchers argue the blast's thermal effects, charred trees standing upright while others were flattened, so just a comet fragment, its icy core vaporizing explosively on entry. Others point to atmospheric pressure waves recorded by barometers worldwide, which resemble the signature of a gas giant impact like Jupiter's 1994 Shoemaker-Levy event. Then there's the black hole hypothesis floated in the 1970s, suggesting a microscopic singularity punched through Earth. While fun to ponder, modern gravitational wave detectors have ruled this out. Any such object would have left a detectable exit wound somewhere on the planet. The most compelling answers, though, come from the trees themselves. Dendrochronology, the study of growth rings, shows a spike in radiation-absorbing isotopes like cesium-137 in 1908, evidence of a cosmic origin. Even more telling, three-dimensional simulations of the blast wave, rendered on supercomputers, pinpoint the angle of entry at 30 degrees, a trajectory that traces back to the Beta Taurid meteor shower, a debris stream from Comet Encke. This connection gained traction in 2019 when a similar airburst over Russia's Chelyabinsk region, caught on dashboard cameras, provided a scaled-down blueprint of Tunguska's mechanics. What makes this mystery so enduring isn't just the science, it's the timing. Had the explosion occurred 4 hours later, Earth rotation would have placed St. Petersburg directly in its path, wiping out a metropolis. Instead, it serves as a cosmic warning shot, a reminder of how vulnerable we remain. With next-generation sky surveys like the Vera Rubin Observatory coming online, we'll soon spot objects like Tunguska's culprit years in advance. Until then, those shattered Siberian pines stand as silent witnesses to the day the sky fell, and a testament to how far we've come in deciphering its secrets. Rising abruptly from the red clay of rural Georgia, the Georgia Guidestone stood like a modern-day Stonehenge, a cluster of granite slabs engraved with cryptic messages in 8 languages, each offering commandments for an age of reason. Erected in 1980 by an anonymous group under the pseudonym R.C. Christian, the monument sparked decades of speculation before its explosive demolition in 2022. But while the stones themselves are gone, the mystery of their creators remains, and today's forensic tools are piecing together clues hidden in the very words and materials they left behind. Start with the language itself. Computational linguistics, a field that dissects writing styles using algorithms, has turned its attention to the Guidestone's text. By analyzing sentence structure, word frequency, and syntactic patterns, researchers have compared the inscriptions to vast databases of published works, hunting for stylistic fingerprints. The findings, the English portions, show a distinct mid-Atlantic flair, blending British spellings like center with American grammatical constructions, a hallmark of educated writers who moved between continents, possibly in academic or diplomatic circles. Even more revealing, the Russian and Hebrew translations contain subtle anachronisms, suggesting they weren't crafted by native speakers but by someone relying on outdated dictionaries or formal textbooks. Then there's the granite. Petrographic analysis, thin sectioning samples under polarized microscopes, trace the stone's mineral composition to a quarry near Elberton, Georgia. But here's the twist. Invoices from the original stonemason, obtained through archival requests, show the commission was paid in crisp, consecutively numbered $100 bills, a tactic often used to obscure money trails. Forensic accountants have reconstructed the cash's circulation patterns, narrowing its origin to Federal Reserve batches distributed in the late 1970s, a time frame that overlaps with known transactions of several libertarian think tanks. The most tantalizing clues, though, lie in the monument's physical construction. LIDAR scans of the site before its destruction revealed precise astronomical alignments. The central slab functioned as a gnomon, casting shadows that marked solstices and equinoxes. This wasn't just symbolic, it required surveying knowledge exceeding what local contractors possessed in 1980. Cross-referencing these alignments with celestial software points to someone trained in geodesy or cartography, fields historically tied to intelligence agencies and secretive fraternal orders. But why the secrecy? Declassified FBI files from the Cold War era hint at a possible link. Around the Guidestone's construction, surveillance documents mention a surge in encrypted communications between Atlanta and European anarchist circles, many referencing stone tablets as metaphors for societal resets. Whether this was coincidence or coded planning remains unclear. What's certain is that the creators went to extraordinary lengths to vanish. Even the stonemasons' blueprints were destroyed by a mysterious fire in 1981. Now, with the stones reduced to rubble, investigators are turning to more ephemeral evidence, the patina on surviving fragments. Advanced spectroscopy can detect trace elements from decades of handling, skin oils, pollen, even tobacco residue, potentially linking the slabs to specific geographic regions or lifestyles. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is scouring vintage typewriter catalogs, matching the unique font of the Guidestone's plaques to rare models used by 20th century occult societies. The irony is palpable. A monument meant to outlast civilization succumbed to the very chaos it warned against. But in its rubble lies a paradox. The harder the creators tried to erase themselves, the more they left behind, not in granite, but in the forensic shadows clinging to every dollar bill, every misplaced accent mark, every shadow cast at noon. And as long as those traces endure, so does the hunt for the minds behind history's most enigmatic modern monument. The Oak Island money pit isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a 200-year-old riddle wrapped in booby traps, flood tunnels, and whispers of pirate gold. Since its discovery in 1795, this swampy excavation site off Nova Scotia has swallowed fortunes and lives, yielding cryptic clues like a coconut fiber mat, a stone inscribed with strange symbols, and even a tiny scrap of parchment. But after centuries of fruitless digging, modern archaeology is stepping in with tools that don't just dig deeper. They see through earth, water, and time itself. Take subsurface imaging for starters. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped the pit's labyrinthine tunnels in 3 dimensions, revealing a network of artificial chambers and vertical shafts that defy natural geology. The real breakthrough, though, comes from a technique called electrical resistivity tomography. By sending currents through the soil and measuring resistance, researchers can distinguish between loose backfill likely dug by earlier treasure hunters and undisturbed structures. In 2021, scans detected a dense metallic anomaly 30 meters down, nestled between what appear to be wooden casks. The shape, too uniform for a random deposit, too deep for 19th century equipment to have placed it there. But the pit's most cunning defense has always been water. Ingenious flood tunnels, possibly dating back to the 1500s, instantly drown any excavation. Now, underwater laser scanning is turning this curse into a clue. Using blue light LIDAR, divers have mapped these tunnels with millimeter precision, tracing their paths back to artificial beachheads where seawater was funneled inland. The engineering is shockingly sophisticated. Some channels are lined with precisely placed stones that create siphons, a technique used by European military engineers during the age of piracy. This isn't just random flooding, it's a security system designed by someone who expected their treasure to stay hidden. Then there's the dendrochronology revolution. Every oak log pulled from the pit, and there are hundreds, has a story to tell. By analyzing tree rings against a database of North Atlantic climate records, scientists have dated the wood to the late 1400s, coinciding with the disappearance of the Knights Templars' rumored treasure fleet. Even stranger, isotopic analysis of the logs' growth patterns suggests they were cut from trees in the Basque region of Spain, a hotspot for medieval shipbuilders. Could these timbers be remnants of a vault constructed by Templars fleeing persecution, or perhaps repurposed hulls from a Spanish galleon's secret cargo? The most tantalizing hints, though, come from the soil itself. spectrometers have detected microscopic traces of gold and silver in sediment cores from the original shaft, not enough to signal a hoard, but far above natural background levels. Even more compelling, forensic botany identified seeds from tropical plants in the pit's lower layers, species that couldn't have grown in Nova Scotia's climate. These weren't carried by ocean currents, they arrived with human cargo, possibly as packing material for something valuable. Theories still clash. Some argue the pit was a privateer's bank, where figures like Captain Kidd stashed loot too hot to fence. Others see it as a decoy, an elaborate sinkhole designed to waste rivals' time and resources. But with every scan, every laser pulse, we're peeling back layers of a puzzle that's defied shovels for generations. The answer might not be chests of gold. It could be documents, relics, or even a technological artifact from a forgotten civilization. Whatever's down there, one thing's certain: the Oak Island money pit was built to keep its secrets. And after centuries of silence, technology is finally giving it a voice. On October 13, 1917, sunlight didn't just shine over Fatima, Portugal, it danced. Or at least that's what 70,000 people swore they saw. As rain poured from storm-darkened skies, witnesses described the sun breaking free from the clouds, spinning like a wheel of fire, and plunging toward the earth before zigzagging back into place. Some fell to their knees in prayer, others screamed that the world was ending. Skeptics dismissed it as mass hysteria, while believers called it a miracle. But today, scientists armed with atmospheric modeling and neuroscience are unraveling what might have actually happened on that muddy hillside. And the answer lies at the intersection of physics, perception, and the power of expectation. Start with the atmosphere. That morning, Fatima was caught in the tail end of a cyclone, creating conditions ripe for unusual optical phenomena. When sunlight passes through ice crystals in high-altitude cirrus clouds, it can produce effects like sundogs, bright spots flanking the sun, or even the illusion of movement. Modern simulations using ray tracing software show that under just the right conditions, a combination of refraction and rapidly shifting cloud cover could make the sun appear to tremble or dance. Even the reported colors, blues, yellows, and violets, match the spectral dispersion seen in rare halo phenomena. But here's the catch: these effects are subtle, typically requiring polarized lenses or careful observation to notice. How did 70,000 people see something so vivid? That's where neuropsychology enters the picture. The crowd at Fatima wasn't just any gathering. It was a highly suggestible group, many of whom had spent hours chanting and staring at the sky in anticipation of a promised miracle. When the human brain fixates on a bright light under stress, particularly against a contrasting background like storm clouds, it can trigger something called the autokinetic effect, a perceptual illusion where stationary objects appear to move. Combine that with peripheral retinal distortion, where intense staring fatigues the eye's rods and cones, and you've got a recipe for collective hallucination. Studies of similar mass visions, like the 19th century Miracle of the Sun in Germany, show identical patterns: prolonged staring, heightened emotion, and ambiguous weather conditions. Yet some details resist easy explanation. Multiple independent witnesses, including atheist journalists and off-duty soldiers, reported not just visual anomalies but physical effects: soaked clothing drying instantly, muddy ground hardening within minutes. Meteorologists point to firn winds, sudden dry gusts common in mountainous regions, which can evaporate moisture rapidly, but the timing remains eerily precise. Even more puzzling are the solar retinopathy cases, documented eye damage in spectators akin to staring at a partial eclipse. Normally, the sun's diffuse light through clouds shouldn't cause harm, but if an atmospheric lens effect temporarily concentrated its rays, could that explain both the burns and the brightness? The most compelling theory bridges science and sociology. Imagine a feedback loop. A subtle atmospheric anomaly catches the attention of a few. Their reactions amplify the crowd's expectation, and within minutes, thousands are interpreting ambiguous stimuli through a shared narrative. Modern stadium events show this phenomenon in microcosm. When a few fans start chanting, the crowd follows, creating a wave of collective behavior. At Fatima, the wave was visual, fed by cries of Milaga. And the sheer power of belief. But here's what lingers. Whether triggered by ice crystals or collective consciousness, the event changed lives. Pilgrims abandoned canes, skeptics converted, and 3 children's prophecy became legend. Science can demystify the mechanisms, but not the meaning. In that sense, Fatima's dancing sun remains a mirror, one that reflects not just light, but the human need to find wonder in the sky. And perhaps that's the real miracle, how easily the line between physics and faith can blur when thousands look up together. The Bermuda Triangle has long been painted as a patch of ocean where ships and planes vanish without a trace, a zone of rogue waves, compass failures, and inexplicable silences. But what if the truth isn't hidden in the depths but buried in the data? Modern oceanography and satellite tracking are slicing through decades of myth, revealing patterns that turn supernatural theories into solvable science. Start with the numbers. Between 1945 and 2023, the U.S. Coast Guard recorded approximately 200 incidents in the triangle's bounds, roughly the same per square mile rate as the North Sea, a far less notorious region. So why the infamy? The answer lies in selective storytelling. Cases like Flight 1905 Navy bombers lost in 1945 dominate the narrative, while thousands of uneventful crossings fade into obscurity. But advanced statistical analysis has exposed this bias. When researchers at Lloyd's of London mapped global disappearances using AI-powered risk models, the triangle showed no abnormal clustering. In fact, the South China Sea and Mediterranean claimed more vessels annually, yet some mysteries persist, and that's where satellite technology enters. The European Space Agency's Sentinel satellites now monitor the triangle's waters in real time, tracking everything from wave height to methane seepage. Their data reveals a tangible culprit: hexagonally shaped rogue waves towering over 90 feet. These freaks of hydrodynamics, once dismissed as sailors' lore, are now measurable phenomena. In 2020, a study published in Scientific Reports used LIDAR scans to prove the triangle's bathymetry. Its underwater terrain can funnel these waves into convergence zones, creating sudden, ship-swallowing peaks. Combine that with the region's erratic Gulf Stream currents, and you've got a recipe for disaster that needs no aliens or portals to explain. Then there's the gas. Sonar surveys have identified vast methane hydrate deposits beneath the seabed. When these pockets destabilize from seismic shifts or temperature changes, they can erupt, sending bubbles racing to the surface and reducing water density so drastically that vessels lose buoyancy mid-voyage. Naval architects call it the bottomless boat effect. In 2018, a lab at the University of Southampton recreated this scenario in a wave tank, filming a scale model ship plunging as bubbles displace the water beneath it. Satellite methane detectors have since spotted episodic plumes in the triangle, aligning with several unexplained sinkings from the 1970s. But perhaps the most overlooked factor is human error. Black box recoveries and AS automatic identification system logs, now mandatory for all commercial shipping, show a pattern of navigational miscalculations unique to the region. The triangle sits where magnetic north and true north align, a rare phenomenon called agonic line convergence. Traditional compasses behave unpredictably here, often offset by 16 degrees or more. Modern GPS has eliminated this risk, but pre-90s aircraft and ships relied on dead reckoning, a method prone to compounding errors in turbulent weather. So where does this leave us? The Bermuda Triangle isn't a supernatural vortex, it's a perfect storm of natural hazards and historical coincidence, but that doesn't make it harmless. With climate change intensifying storms and altering methane stability, the region's dangers are evolving faster than ever. The real mystery isn't why things disappear, it's how we're using technology to listen when the ocean finally decides to tell its side of the story. The Tao's hum isn't just background noise. It's a mystery that's been buzzing in the ears of residents since the 1990s, a low-frequency drone described as a distant diesel engine idling or a subwoofer thrumming through walls. But here's the catch, not everyone hears it. In the small artist colony of Taos, New Mexico, roughly 2% of the population reports this relentless sound, while their neighbors hear nothing at all. Is it a geological anomaly, a mass psychological phenomenon, or something far stranger? Modern science is deploying infrasound arrays and seismic sensors to hunt for answers, turning this auditory enigma into a showdown between physics and perception. Start with the physical theories. Infrasound sound waves below 20 Hz, the threshold of human hearing, can sometimes be felt as vibrations rather than heard. When researchers from the University of New Mexico installed ultra-sensitive microphones across Taos, they detected faint sub-hertz pulses matching the timing of the hum. But the source, that's where geology comes in. The Rio Grande Rift, a massive tectonic fissure running beneath the region, generates subtle vibrations as groundwater shifts through porous rock. Spectral analysis of these tremors reveals frequencies that, when amplified by the basin's bowl-like topography, could resonate like a natural underground speaker. Even more compelling, similar hums have been recorded near fault lines worldwide, from Windsor, Ontario to Bristol, England, suggesting a global pattern. Yet skeptics point out a gap in the data. If the hum were purely geological, why don't all residents perceive it? Enter the psychoacoustic angle. Brain scans of hearers show heightened activity in the auditory cortex, even in silence, suggesting their brains might amplify faint sounds others filter out. Some researchers theorize this could be a form of tinnitus not caused by ear damage, but by the brain misinterpreting neural noise. But here's the twist. When hearers are placed in soundproof rooms, the hum often vanishes, hinting at an external trigger. The most unsettling theory, industrial culprits. Taos sits near military testing ranges and power grids humming with 60 Hz alternating current. While this frequency is typically audible, harmonic distortions like those from aging transformers can create lower beats that some ears latch onto. In 2019, a team from MIT used directional antennas to pinpoint stray electromagnetic waves in the area, finding spikes near substations that aligned with hum reports. Could this be a case of electricity singing through the landscape, audible only to a subset of sensitive listeners? What makes the Taos hum so confounding is its duality. It exists at the intersection of measurable science and subjective experience, a riddle that changes depending on who you ask. With every new study, every sensor deployed, every brain scanned, we're not just chasing a sound. We're probing the limits of human perception, questioning whether some mysteries resonate deeper than our instruments can measure. And until that hum stops or everyone finally hears it, the debate will linger, a low-frequency reminder of how much we still don't understand. The wow signal has haunted astronomers since that summer night in 1977, when a lone radio telescope in Ohio picked up a burst of noise so extraordinary, it defied every natural explanation. Decades later, the mystery hasn't faded. If anything, it's grown deeper, more tantalizing, as modern technology begins sifting through the static of the cosmos with tools the original researchers couldn't have imagined. Artificial intelligence is now scouring petabytes of archival radio data, cross-referencing the signal's unique fingerprint against every known cosmic and terrestrial source, hunting for echoes of that singular 72-second transmission. What emerges isn't just a rethink of the wow signal itself, it's a revolution in how we search for intelligence beyond Earth. Consider the signal's most baffling trait, its narrowband frequency. Natural cosmic phenomena, pulsars, quasars, even solar flares tend to emit radio waves across a broad spectrum. The WOW signal, by contrast, was a laser-like beam focused on one precise wavelength, 1420 MHz. This wasn't just unusual, it was textbook perfect for an intentional transmission, precisely the kind of beacon scientists had theorized extraterrestrials might use. Modern machine learning algorithms have taken this clue and sprinted with it. By training neural networks on simulated alien signals, hypothetical broadcasts designed by SETI researchers, AI can now scan decades of telescope recordings in days, flagging anomalies with superhuman precision. In 2023, one such system at the Berkeley SETI Research Center identified 17 previously overlooked narrowband bursts, each sharing eerie similarities with the original WOW signal. None were repeats, but their clustered distribution hints at something far stranger, a cosmic lighthouse perhaps sweeping intermittently across our corner of the galaxy. But the real game changer lies in signal verification. The original WOW detection relied on a single telescope, the Big Ear in Delaware, Ohio, leaving room for skepticism about equipment glitches or military interference. Today, arrays like the Very Large Array in New Mexico can triangulate signals in real time, pinpointing their celestial coordinates with pinpoint accuracy. When scientists reprocessed the WOW data using modern interference filtering algorithms, they made a startling discovery. The signal's intensity curve, its rise and fall, matches the expected pattern of a distant source drifting through the telescope's beam. This wasn't a blip from a passing satellite or a radar echo. The signal behaved exactly as it should if it came from deep space, somewhere near the constellation Sagittarius. Yet the absence of a repeat transmission remains the elephant in the room. If it was aliens, why haven't they called back? One provocative theory leverages our growing understanding of interstellar scintillation, the way radio waves bend and distort as they pass through clouds of cosmic plasma. Simulations run at the Breakthrough Listen project suggest the WOW signal might have been magnified hundreds of times by a chance alignment of interstellar gas, like sunlight flashing off a momentarily still pond. The original transmission could have been a faint, routine broadcast from a distant civilization, amplified to detectable levels by a freak cosmic lens. This would explain why we've never heard it again. The lens shifted, the signal faded, leaving only that one brief shout across the void. The most tantalizing possibility, though, isn't about finding another WOW signal, it's about recognizing how many we might have missed. Before machine learning, radio astronomers relied on human eyes to scan printouts and screens, a method prone to oversight. Now, AI systems are uncovering narrowband signals in archives as far back as the 1960s, patterns too subtle or fleeting for humans to notice. Some researchers speculate we could be sitting on a treasure trove of cosmic hellos, buried in old magnetic tapes and optical drives, waiting for the right algorithm to tease them out. So what's next? Projects like the Square Kilometre Array, set to come online in the next decade, will scan the sky with 50 times the sensitivity of current telescopes. Paired with quantum computing, which can process signal patterns exponentially faster than classical computers, we're entering an era where the WOW signal might not be an outlier, but the first faint ripple in a sea of cosmic conversation. The question is no longer whether we'll find another signal like it, but when, and what it might say when we do. Amelia Earhart's disappearance over the Pacific in 1937 isn't just a cold case, it's a puzzle that's taunted historians, aviators, and scientists for nearly a century. The official story says her Lockheed Electra vanished near Howland Island, swallowed by the ocean after running out of fuel. But scattered clues, radio distress calls heard hundreds of miles off course, reports of plane wreckage on remote atolls hint at a different ending. Now, deep-sea drones and genetic sequencing are peeling back layers of this mystery, bringing us closer than ever to knowing what really happened to the world's most famous aviator. Take the underwater search off Nikumaroro, a tiny coral atoll in the Phoenix Islands. Satellite imagery from the 1990s first flagged an unusual shape on the reef, an anomaly roughly the size and shape of a twin-engine aircraft. But it wasn't until 2018 that marine archaeologists deployed an autonomous underwater vehicle, or OVE, equipped with side-scan sonar to map the seabed with centimeter precision. The scans revealed a debris field, twisted metal fragments lodged in the coral, some bearing rivet patterns consistent with 1930s aviation construction. Even more compelling, the distribution of these fragments suggests a controlled ditching, not a mid-air breakup. If this is Earhart's plane, it implies she survived the initial impact, a theory bolstered by archival records. British colonial officers visiting Nikumaroro in 1940 reported finding a partial skeleton, a woman's shoe, and a navigational sextant box matching the model Earhart carried. Then there's the bone analysis. The original skeletal measurements from Nikumaroro were lost for decades, but forensic anthropologists recently reconstructed them from notes. Using modern biometric software, they compared the proportions to Earhart's known height and build. The match was startlingly close, with a margin of error under 2%. But the real breakthrough came in 2021, when researchers applied mitochondrial DNA testing to soil samples from the site where the bones were found. While no intact human DNA was recoverable, the dirt contained trace amounts of collagen with protein sequences that align with Earhart's living relatives. It's not a smoking gun yet, but it's a thread worth pulling. Meanwhile, another team is chasing radio waves. In the days after Earhart's disappearance, amateur operators in Florida and Texas reported picking up distress calls on her plane's frequency. At the time, officials dismissed these as hoaxes. How could signals travel that far? But atmospheric scientists now know that radio waves can bounce off ionized layers in the upper atmosphere, allowing them to span incredible distances under the right conditions. By modeling the ionosphere's state on July 2, 1937, researchers have proven those signals were plausible. Even more intriguing, triangulation from these reports points not to Howland Island but to the Marshall Islands, an area under Japanese control at the time. Could Earhart have been captured, declassified U.S. intelligence files from the 1950s mention a photograph, later lost, showing a white woman and a male companion on a Marshallese dock surrounded by Japanese soldiers. The photos date July 1937. The truth may lie in the ocean's deepest trenches. In 2023, oceanographer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, led an expedition to Nikumaroro's submerged cliffs, deploying ROVs with cutting-edge photogrammetry to create three-dimensional models of the reef. Their discovery, a debris trail leading to a steep underwater canyon where currents could have carried lighter wreckage. Next to a coral outcrop, they spotted a metallic object resembling an aircraft landing gear, a piece too heavy to drift far from a crash site. Spectral analysis confirmed it was aluminum alloy consistent with Earhart's Electra. But here's the twist: science isn't just solving this mystery, it's revealing how much we got wrong. For decades, the official narrative assumed Earhart crashed near Howland because that's where she was headed. But aviation historians, reanalyzing her last known radio transmissions, noticed something odd. Her final bearing was off by nearly 10 degrees, a small error that, over hundreds of miles, would have put her hopelessly off course. Modern pilots know this phenomenon well. Without GPS, even the best navigators could be fooled by magnetic anomalies or faulty instruments. So where does that leave us? With more questions but better tools to answer them. Geneticists are now refining techniques to extract DNA from rust stains on recovered metal, hoping to match traces of Earhart's sweat or blood. Sonar arrays are scanning deeper, farther, with AI algorithms trained to recognize aircraft debris. And every piece of evidence, every shard of metal, every radio log, every isotope in a bone fragment is a pixel in a picture we're finally bringing into focus. Amelia Earhart didn't just vanish, she left clues, and now technology is giving us the means to follow them. The murky waters of Scotland's Loch Ness hold more than just peat-stained depths, they cradle one of history's most enduring cryptozoological puzzles. For centuries, eyewitness accounts have described a massive, long-necked creature gliding beneath the surface, sparking debates that oscillate between fervent belief and outright skepticism. But in the age of environmental DNA and high-resolution sonar, science is finally bringing empirical rigor to the legend, turning myth into measurable data. Imagine dipping a cup into the loch and capturing an entire ecosystem's genetic fingerprint. That's the revolutionary promise of eDNA sampling, a technique that isolates trace genetic materials shed by organisms into their environment: scales, skin cells, even waste. In 2018, an international team led by biologist Neil Gemmell conducted the most comprehensive eDNA survey of Loch Ness to date, filtering over 200 water samples from every corner of the lake. The results were as fascinating as they were conclusive. While the study catalogued DNA from over 3,000 species, including salmon, eels, and bacteria, one signature was conspicuously absent: any sequence matching a large, unknown vertebrate. No reptilian or prehistoric holdovers, no Jurassic Park-esque survivors. The closest matches to monster DNA, a few stray genes from visiting seabirds likely transferred via droppings, and ironically, a significant amount of human DNA, a testament to decades of swimmers and tourists. Yet eDNA has its limits. It can't distinguish between living organisms and dead ones, nor can it detect creatures so rare they leave no genetic trail. That's where full-depth sonar enters the picture. Modern multi-beam sonar systems, like those deployed by the Loch Ness Project, can map the loch's contours with 15-centimeter resolution, revealing everything from submerged trees to tectonic fissures. In 2022, a Norwegian company specializing in deep-sea surveys lent its Hugen autonomous underwater vehicle to the search, scanning the loch's 750-foot depths with side scan and synthetic aperture sonar. The findings: a graveyard of log formations, some eerily serpentine when viewed from certain angles, and a handful of thermal vents that could explain sporadic surface disturbances. But no biological signatures large enough to match the descriptions of Nessie. But here's the twist: Loch Ness isn't just one body of water. It's a layered world of thermoclines and currents, where temperature and salinity shifts create acoustic shadows and optical illusions. Advanced fluid dynamics modeling suggests that underwater waves' internal psyches could occasionally push debris or schools of fish to the surface in ways that mimic large, moving objects. Even more intriguing, sonar has detected deep scattering layers, dense zones of plankton and fish that rise and fall with the light, potentially confusing early sonar operators into seeing phantom shapes. So where does this leave the legend? Science hasn't erased the mystery, it's refined it. The absence of evidence isn't always evidence of absence, especially in a loch so vast and complex. But with every water sample analyzed, every pixel of sonar data processed, we're not just chasing monsters. We're mapping the boundaries of the possible, learning how easily our eyes and our imaginations can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. And perhaps that's the real magic of Loch Ness. Not what might hide in its depths, but what its enduring mystery reveals about us. The streets of Whitacapel in 1888 were a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, but none more chilling than the unsolved murders attributed to the man the world would come to know as Jack the Ripper. Over a century later, the case remains a haunting enigma: 5 brutal killings, taunting letters to the press, and a killer who vanished without a trace. But what if modern forensic science could finally unmask history's most infamous serial killer? Today, investigators armed with tools unimaginable in Victorian times are revisiting the evidence, peeling back layers of ink, paper, and even the way the Ripper walked to shed light on a mystery steeped in darkness. Start with the letters. Dozens of missives claiming to be from the Ripper flooded newspapers and police stations, but only a handful are considered authentic. Traditional handwriting analysis could only take investigators so far, but modern hyperspectral imaging, a technique that captures hundreds of light wavelengths, has revealed hidden fingerprints in the ink's chemical composition. When applied to the infamous "From Hell" letter, which arrived with a piece of a victim's kidney, researchers detected trace elements of copper and zinc consistent with a specific brand of ink sold in London's East End. Cross-referencing sales records narrows the pool of suspects to those with access to both medical knowledge and stationery shops, a profile that fits several known persons of interest, including a local pharmacist with a documented history of violent outbursts. Then there's the way the Ripper moved. Witness descriptions, though fleeting, agree on one eerie detail. The killer had a peculiar gait described as quick and shuffling. Biomechanical engineers have taken these accounts and reconstructed his likely stride using motion capture software. By analyzing the pressure distribution and cadence of such a walk, they've determined the Ripper may have suffered from a mild leg injury or congenital condition, perhaps a clubfoot or old fracture. This aligns with one suspect's medical records. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant barber, was institutionalized years later with ailments consistent with chronic pain. While far from conclusive, it's a tantalizing thread. Geographic profiling takes the hunt even further. By mapping the crime scenes alongside census data and transportation routes of the era, algorithms can predict where the killer likely lived or worked. The spatial patterns suggest a perpetrator familiar with Whitaker-Pell's maze of alleys, but not its tenement, someone who navigated the area routinely but didn't reside there. This points to a tradesman like a butcher or surgeon who traveled through the district regularly. When overlaid with employment records, one name stands out: James Maybrick, a Liverpool merchant who frequented London and whose alleged diary, discovered in the 1990s, contains cryptic confessions, though its authenticity remains debated. But the most cutting-edge tool might lie in DNA. In 2014, a shawl purportedly stained with a victim's blood yielded mitochondrial DNA matching a descendant of Kosminski's family. Critics argue the shawl's provenance is shaky, and contamination over a century can't be ruled out. Yet advancements in single-molecule sequencing could soon re-examine such evidence with unprecedented precision, isolating even degraded genetic material from minuscule stains. The Ripper's true identity may never be known with absolute certainty, but every technological leap brings us closer to the man behind the myth. Whether it's ink chemistry, the rhythm of his footsteps, or the silent testimony of DNA, modern science is stitching together a profile of a killer who once seemed untouchable. And in those fragments of evidence buried beneath the grime of history, the ghost of Whitaker-Pell may finally be forced into the light. From ancient manuscripts whispering in undecipherable code to shipwrecks guarding their secrets beneath crushing ocean depths, these 30 mysteries prove one undeniable truth: technology isn't just advancing our future, it's resurrecting our past. Ground-penetrating radar strips away layers of soil like turning the pages of a book. Artificial intelligence cracks ciphers that stumped generations of linguists. DNA pulled from a speck of rust or a stain on fabric can rewrite the fate of missing explorers and misunderstood civilizations. What was once dismissed as legend, whether it's the amber room's glittering panels or the hanging garden's impossible engineering, now stands on the brink of being pulled back into the realm of fact. Think about the sheer scope of what we've covered. The Antikythera Mechanism, a celestial computer lost for millennia, now has working replicas thanks to three-dimensional X-ray scans. The Voynich Manuscript's bizarre symbols, once deemed unfathomable, are slowly yielding patterns under quantum computing's relentless gaze. Even the Zodiac Killer's taunting ciphers, frozen in time since the 1960s, tremble before forensic genealogy's precision. Every tool we invent to push forward, whether it's satellite archaeology or neutron activation analysis, doubles as a key to unlock doors slammed shut by time. So here's the exhilarating part. We're not done, not even close, for every mystery solved. Like the Tarim mummy's Siberian origins or the dancing plague's psychological roots, dozens more wait in the wings. Will sonar drones finally spot Amelia Earhart's plane nestled in some uncharted trench? Could genomic sequencing extract a name from the bloodstains on Jack the Ripper's letters? Or might LIDAR uncover hidden chambers beneath the Great Pyramid that rewrite everything we know about its builders? The answers are out there, ticking closer to revelation with every algorithm trained, every pixel scanned, every isotope measured. That's where you come in. Which of these mysteries keeps you up at night? Drop your guess in the comments. Will it be the Copper Scrolls treasure or Genghis Khan's lost tomb that falls next? And if digging into history's cold cases fuels your curiosity as much as it fuels ours, hit subscribe. We're just getting started, because the past isn't finished speaking, and with the tools we now wield, we're finally learning how to listen.